We're starting. And we are live. Welcome back to Modwain's House of Fun. It's Wednesday. Woohoo! Okay, that's the title. There's not much I wanted to say. But what I do want to say is this. We've got lovely people again with us. And we were thinking about so many things that we were talking about. I'm almost thinking I should start recording the pre-streams because so many topics get basically discussed before we even go live. I didn't really have a topic at hand. I brought a line of thinking that we could talk about. But let's see what my lovely guests want to talk about. Who wants to go first?
Normally we're all like chomping at the bit. Now that we're put on the spot, it's like I say, yo, hey everybody. I like the angle of trying to address history repeating itself, but like it's
You're breaking up a bit, Elicia.
more.
You're breaking up a lot, Elicia. We have no idea.
It's from her video, Modwain. The video that she released today. It was bloody awesome. I loved. I really liked it.
Oh yeah, no, it was.
Thank you.
History repeating itself. Yeah, but the people who are making it happen again don't realize that they are repeating themselves because the total lack of education. They're not getting an education. They're getting indoctrinated, and so they can't see what they are doing.
They don't know anything about history.
But this is the thing I've been saying time and again. I mean, Antifa is not a response to fascism. It's the cause of fascism. And the same people are basically pushing the same narratives as the Bolsheviks did at the turn of the 20th century. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, basically we're going to repeat a bunch of moves. And some countries are already being destroyed by this. I mean, look at, you know what? I'm not even going to talk about Venezuela because we've all know this. Look at Colombia. Colombia is losing healthcare because of people from Venezuela coming to Colombia. And the hospitals can't cope.
Yes, they can't, exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've been noticing that myself. Like when I was reading something by George Orwell, not his books, but I was reading, I can send you the link if I still have it, but it shows that history is really repeating itself because I was reading the exact same talking points that we are discussing like right now, like what the anti-feminist community discuss with censorship. Not only that, but like I was reading The Heart of a Man Under Socialism by Oscar Wilde. And it also seems like, it seems like history is repeating itself because Oscar Wilde talks about being censored, not so much by the government, but being censored by the citizens, where how something is not okay to talk about, and how there's like social pressure to silence you. And it was interesting to read, but I don't agree with his socialist views, though.
But there is something scary, and a lot of people that keep pushing socialism kind of only have this utopian idea in front of themselves, even though everything we know, everything that has been tried, everything that has been proven, proves it's impossible.
Yeah.
And this
I think you have to be out of the real world. So if you're in academia or the media or these places, it's possible to conceive of a utopia. The minute you go into the real world, you realize the world's not like that.
Maybe we should like recycle teachers. Do you know what I'm saying? How maybe that's why it always ends in socialism, because all the school systems are set up like socialism. You know, you've got the person in charge. What if we were to just start recycling teachers, where you can be a teacher for like 10 years tops, or I don't know, something that.
Well, I think before people go to university, they should have 2 or 3 years. And they have to go out and get a job as a qualification for university.
How does your university work? Because when I try to research schools in other countries, I notice that everybody's different, right? So our high school ends at 18.
Mm-hmm.
And does your guys?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Okay, because in Japan, they end schooling, I think it was like 14, and then after that it's more of like private school, like college. No, anyone?
I'll take your word for it. But no, I just I had this thought because it happened to me. I went to university, dropped out, got a job, and then when I went back to university, I was just like a completely different person because I was used to working and responsibility and had a work ethic, which, the people at university were there on a jolly.
Well, they had the university I went to. Many of the teachers actually had to be working in their field to have the job, unless you were like, so those were the minor professors, and then you had the ones without a PhD. So if you had a PhD, you didn't have to be working in your field, but if you had like, say, a master's, you had to be working in your field. That might actually be even better instead of having these pompous, to have people.
You have to get rid of all these BS subjects.
Yeah.
The basket weaving courses, exactly, yes.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Like, I don't think that gender studies is necessary. Like, when it comes to colleges, I think that people should learn a career, like something that can help you get a job. I don't think you should just be learning philosophy.
Right. Even in elementary school, we already get warned by the dangers of fascism and Nazism, but they're particularly quiet when it comes to communism and gulags. I can't remember in school when we had that subject, but we did have a lot of deal with Nazism.
We didn't talk about communism, Russia. We didn't talk about the gulags. We didn't talk about socialism at all in a negative way.
So you have the same experience.
Oh, aye. Same country.
Today in Portugal, we celebrated the 44th anniversary of the Carnation Revolution, where we overthrew our right-wing fascist dictator.
Mm-hmm.
There is absolutely no way that we will go back to that. But then again, in 1975, we also had another coup d'etat, because or attempted one, because the communists tried to take over control. And we also remember that it was the 25th of November. We were 3 days away. If the communist cowards had held out, we were 3 days away from being invaded by NATO. I remember hearing an interview from it was during, let's see, I think it wasn't Gerald Ford. It was just after Nixon. I can't remember who was the president of the United States after Nixon.
But at that time, socialism and the Frankfurt School of Thought weren't that influential in the world theater. They're pretty influential in the world theater now.
Yes. Oh, yeah, they were. Yes, our first our socialism here is centrist. Our governments, all of them, from the extreme right to the extreme left, center, because no one will go to the extremes. We are still very much burnt by the extremes. That's why we are centrists.
If we look at the rest of Europe at this point, the only reason people still claim we are left of center is because there is no right.
Oh, we have a right. It's the social democrats. No, the Christian Democrats. We have a right. They were in the last center-right government. Now we have a centre-left government with the Communists and the Greens, and even more left-wing party as a coalition.
Can I ask you something, Carlos?
Absolutely, yes.
Because this is really getting me really confused at the minute. What actually constitutes left and right? Is that economic? Is it social? Because
all of it. You know, you know what socialism is. Our governments here, all of them, want put into effect social actions, basically, pensions, etc., welfare, and that. But then again, they also protect the private sector, the capitalist, the right side, because the most fervent socialist here will get a job in a corporation, capitalist corporation. See what I mean?
No, the reason I ask is because it's like we've got a conservative government, it's supposed to be right wing.
It's not,
an open feminist. Her Home Secretary's an open feminist. They are getting upset at the wage gap, which doesn't exist, but they talk about it as a national disgrace that needs to be fixed urgently. And this is supposed to be the right wing. And I'm thinking, what is right wing about government action to gerrymander how people are paid so that some averages of averages come out 50-50 by sex?
I can answer it this way. Our governments here just want to get elected. And the same with the UK. We are very, very... Jesus, we even share most of the weather, God damn it. I've been noticing this more and more, except that we are too fucking poor to implement most of those bullshit indoctrination shit. Our teachers and our universities teachers, they don't give a shit about the students. They don't want to indoctrinate. They want to get paid at the end of the month. I worked for 10 years at a high school. I worked for 10 years at a high school. I saw them, how they operated. They hated the kids. They wanted to get the class over as fast as they can to get the fuck out of there. And also it helps that being poor, there's not a lot of jobs, so they have to take they open up it's like a God, we call it my word's not coming out. They open up it's like a raffle type thing system, but it's not a raffle where all the teachers, this is the teachers, they apply, and then not all of them will get there's like 45,000 teachers for about 15,000 jobs. You see what happens when that occurs?
Oh, like a lottery. Right?
Sort of like a lottery, exactly. Sort of like a contest. They even call it a concurso, which translates to contest from Portuguese to English.
Do they just do they put their names in a hat and just draw it out? I don't.
No. I filled that out. I tried it once. I filled out that form. It's fucking nerve-wracking. You have to fill it up. Then you hand it into the bureaucracy of your district, and then you hope for the best. The first ones, the more seniority have, but you have a lot of mobility, especially the younger ones. They can go from one end of Portugal to the other end, and they have to pay rent, transport, food, and shit. And even at 1,250 euros guaranteed for the fucking first year, they earn more than me. Those bastards. It doesn't. It's difficult, so there's no indoctrination. And the university teachers, again, even with tenure, because they all basically have tenure here. I have tenure at my work, so I can't be fired, which is awesome. Public service sometimes has its benefits. They teach in the private sector as well. So they have 3 or 4 teaching jobs in a sort of a small area, about within 100 kilometers or so. So they also don't have time to indoctrinate. The only ones that do indoctrinate are the social studies and what I call the basket weaving courses, which we do have sort of here, but they're very, very small.
Yeah.
Where are you at again? Where are you at?
We plagiarized the American First Amendment, by the way.
What?
In our
Wait.
country.
He's in Portugal.
Oh, you're in Portugal. Okay.
I
Oh,
live here.
you guys had like when the commies came, that was quite harsh,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Holy cow.
The com?
No.
No, wrong place. Not Poland, Portugal.
No, I remember watching a documentary about Portugal and how you guys were having 2 different factions at one point. I don't know when it was, but it seemed quite brutal to live there.
Oh, it was. My father had to leave at 15 to France, where my grandfather was there, clandestine. My father was a illegal immigrant until he got into France. In Spain, he was an illegal immigrant, but when he got into France, he went to the consulate and they gave him papers straight away. Yeah,
Wow.
not like now. Yeah, not like now. So yeah.
You guys still, it's fresh in your mind, so that's good, right? So then it's not going to, maybe you'll be one of the few countries that are the holdouts, right? So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have faith in my little shithole of a country. We are so bad that no one wants to take over us. We are so bad that no one wants to know about us. We are so small that we go under the radar, and we are safe. Absolutely, it's a shithole country, but we are safe. I love it. Best country in the world.
Well, there is something to be said for that, though. I mean, if we look at just about every Western country at this moment, except for the new Western countries, the countries that just got out of socialism, communism, most Western countries are throwing away their future. If we look at the whole migrant situation, the education situation, the feminism situation, the LGBTQ situation, they're doing everything which is kind of already pointed out 100 years ago what the Bolsheviks wanted to do with the rest of the Western world.
Well, if it comes to these extreme ideologies, I think Poland is pretty woke.
Hungary too. But then again, I mean, they haven't been out of the oppression that long, to be honest. So,
well, where can we go? That's what I'm worried about, because I'm so afraid when the Democrats retake the Senate in the United States, they are so pissed right now that I worry that it's just going to like do some weird messed up thing in the United States. I'm like, where do you go? There's nowhere to go.
yeah.
How Portugal?
Portugal, yes.
Oh man, gee, I would love the South African farms to come over. We have so much space that has been not used. They could farm.
Oh, aye.
And I'd like to learn more. That's Dutch, you know. Dutch, German, French, Spanish, yeah. But some countries that when they come out of dictatorship, just to end my little rant about Portugal and so on, they can go to the other extreme. Portugal went moderate because in the space of 1 year they went from fascism to communism, and then they went. The general said, "No, shit, stop. No, we're going back to the center. The center is good."
Yeah.
And we've been sort of centrist from now. But Spain went from dictatorship in 75 to fucking full-blown SJW at the moment. They are bad.
But at the same time, they're somewhat more woke than other European countries. I mean, they still celebrate the start of the, Reconquista.
Oh, yeah. Portugal teaches our most if I was to talk to an SJW and say I am proud of my history, Portugal started the Atlantic slave trade, freak out, but we talk about it. We are proud of our discoveries. We are not proud of what they did back then, but we know that they did it back then, not now. In fact, we were one of the first. We were included in the first countries to ban slavery, etc. in Europe. I think I can't remember if it was the Danes that did it first. There's a sort of a sequence who did it first. But we were in there with that group, and so yeah. And we pass into law all SJW laws, but we just have no money to enforce them or anything. We put them there. There's no fight for there's no speaking. Even our most leftist politicians don't speak of the wage gap, because if they start speaking of the wage gap, they say, look at the there is no there. They know that they can't get away with it because it's in the law, and we sort of obey the law, but we are the most.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you. Real Raven, why can't you join, mate?
Because he doesn't like you.
No, probably he doesn't like me. No,
that's not it. I missed that. And hi there, Crusader, and hi there, Squarepeg. Square, if you want to join as well, join us on the Skype thingy.
Crusader gets a high, Square gets a high, I don't get a high. I see how I sound, Stan.
I said hi, nobody, before I started.
I apologize.
Hello, nobody.
No one talks to nobody.
No one talks to nobody. How's everyone doing?
Fine.
All right.
Getting better.
Good.
So yeah, we went there to the how history is repeating itself, and we sort of we set it up well. Now we can how it's repeating itself.
But
actually, can I just make an observation? It's something I've been figuring out.
No.
Okay, thanks, nobody. Nobody objected, therefore I'm okay to continue. I like the way this works. Okay, so if you look at the history, the timing, so you had industrialization in Britain, and as a reaction, you got a resurgence in socialism leading to the Marxism and the Communist Manifesto, and that was 75 years, 80 years. That was a long interval. And people say, oh, well, I can't get rid of socialism. Well, this is my thought. Socialism is actually a byproduct of the capitalist system we've got. Unless you fix the things in capitalism that cause it, you will not get rid of it. It'll keep coming back forever.
Wait, I gotta jump in. I was gonna go take a quick break, but I heard John bring up it's capitalism's fault, and if you don't take care
of not fault.
You know what would take care of the problem with capitalism that led to this? If we had not followed the British model in the United States and did that patent law crap. You want to go back through history, the patent law made it so that it was special for just particular companies. That's not capitalism. That is fascism. That is the government giving special rights and privileges to individuals or individual companies. And the only reason anyone ever did that in the first place was because they wanted it to promote ingenuity, correct? Yeah. But what happened, you had your people like Benjamin Franklin just going and getting all the smart people, paying them just enough to live. And then he got all of their patents. And that's what's happened throughout history. So it's not a problem with capitalism. It is a problem with government. And it's not systemic of capitalism. That is
sorry, Elicia. I misspoke because I was explaining, it's not capitalism that's the problem. It's industrialization that was the problem. What happened in the first half of the 19th century, where people were essentially forced into slums, a condition that lasted for until the 1920s and 30s. And it was the industrialization and the system of people literally not having an out. And your country's different. And it's all right saying, oh, well, we shouldn't have followed the British, but patent law or whatever, there's nothing to do with it. It was the fact that you had a population who had nothing, no way of supporting themselves apart from go and work in the factories for every hour. Every member of the family, the children from the age of 10.
Isn't that the fault of leadership, your government? Because first off, it made it where you couldn't own property. That was problem number one. When every time
that's 950 years old.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Is if
it's not the fault of the government, it's the fault of the bloody Normans. But you can't go back 950 years and then do that.
We can call it a king, we can call it a pharaoh, we can call it whatever we want. Is that when governments don't allow people the right to take care of themselves, that we have these problems.
No, I quite agree. But the point is what I'm saying is we had a system. That system had problems. Socialism was a response. And until you understand how that relationship works, socialism will keep coming up because that relationship will perpetuate. That was my point. It's not capitalism's fault. It sounds like you're saying in how it all works that causes the phenomenon that is called socialism to arise.
It sounds like what you're saying.
You're breaking up so bad.
It sounds like what you're saying is that socialism is a symptom of capitalism, not.
Yeah, it is. It came up after, and it keeps coming up, even in a wealthy society like ours, where everything was getting better, and yet it all rears its ugly head. Why? Why does it keep coming back? It keeps coming back because there's something that's causing it to come back.
Well, in all fairness, I think one of the reasons it keeps coming back is because that we now have schools, professors, who are pretending that this is actually a good thing. None of them are economic professors, by the way, but nobody cares about that.
Can't really speak for anywhere else, but I can speak for in America. When professors reach tenure, they can say whatever the hell they want. They can believe whatever the hell they want, and they won't be fired.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and that is a very large problem. I will not deny that, but
it's
worse. Anything about it right now.
It's worse than individuals.
They actually can be fired. Look at that Southern Californian or whatever the Californian professor.
Come on, I mean, look at what she had to do. I mean, she basically started trash talking about a wife of a president.
You guys are talking about the chick. You guys are talking about the chick who talked about Barbara Bush, right? Yeah, she's not getting fired. She's not getting fired.
She can't be fired, but
she's not getting disciplined either.
She should not get fired. She should get disciplined, but not fired. Yeah.
I don't even think she should be disciplined. She has every right to say what she said, and the Bush.
Absolutely.
I think that when we start not being able to criticize people, especially people in power, that also leads to tyranny. The Bush family legacy is harsh, and though it was inappropriate of her to say it, I don't like to see somebody getting.
Look,
she shouldn't be. If you want a better example, Tim
That's
Hunt.
like saying that kid, the guy with the Hitler puppy. Well, he shouldn't have done. Yeah, Count Dankula. Right? Or what about that young girl that posted the rap lyrics, right?
That's disgusting.
Okay, the thing with the rap lyrics is fine, but comparing Count Dankula to this is a false equivalency.
Okay, then let's compare it to.
No, not really. No, not really. Same same law.
It's free speech.
It's free speech in the classroom.
I'm British, and we've just got accepted that. And not accepted it as in we want it, but we have to recognise that we've lost free speech, and now we have to fight like fuck to get it back.
Well, the thing is you can't compare the Count Dankula thing to a teacher because a teacher has tenure, a teacher has a job, and a teacher is saying these things while she's on her job. He made a video for his girlfriend and posted it on the internet.
You're already putting limits on free speech.
True that.
Yeah.
She was a college professor. Now, if she was like, say, in a public school, then she should be more stringent rules. But we're talking about she's in college.
Actually, I disagree. I think that if you're in a public school, you should have the right to say whatever you want because it's a public government-funded institution. If you're in a college, it's a private institution, which means that they can tell you to say or not say whatever they want.
The teachers at the school work for the parents. They work for the taxpayers. So they don't have a right to say whatever they want in school, especially to young children.
When I said that, sorry to interrupt, I'll be really brief. When I said that she should be punished, I'm only saying that it's getting the same deal that they do to their enemies. You know what? See what I mean? I don't mean punished I mean absolutely ridiculed and shit, and say they have to go for a week or a month on paid leave and shit like that. That sort of thing. Just a little. Let's say a word. They say words have consequences. Okay, then she should also face them. The law it should be the same for everyone. If they say the words have consequences, then she should go, not fired or whatever. Just to feel that the words that she's saying have consequences. They are not immune. They think they're immune to whatever to their position. They are. So we will censor speech, do this and that. We are immune. No, they will also be. They will also be under. God damn, my words not coming out. Anyway, you know what I mean.
The problem is they convince themselves they can't be racist, they can't be sexist, they can't be this, they can't be that, and so they think they are free to say anything they like because somehow it's all right when they say it.
Yes, that's like them being brainwashed. You know, it's like they have a religion.
Well, these are the methods they're picking up from the people who are teaching them.
Yeah, that's the thing, though, because especially in the Western world at the moment, America foremost, but we see this in Europe as well. In, for example, a country like Germany or UK or the Netherlands, the social justice narrative that has been pushed by the Frankfurt School of Thought for the last, let's say, 70, 80 years is being picked up well, unfortunately. And considering that, especially on universities, certain viewpoints have been rooted out of universities. So you'll find very few professors talking against the leftist narrative that's being pushed. Yeah,
but I think politicians are pandering to it. They think it's mainstream because
it is mainstream. That's the problem. It is mainstream.
The politicians have been subjected to it as much as anybody else because they study those sorts of subjects. The people who become politicians, lawyers and whatever, are in fields that have heavily indoctrinated by social justice.
Politicians are just like marketers. They just want as much as votes as they can, and they think this is the best way to go. So.
I saw was a tweet, but it was also a thread or an article. The 10%. It just takes 10% of a population, allowed 10%, to change societies.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what's been going on for the last 60 years. Mm. I mean, in all
basically,
fairness,
this has gone on. This is true since the Industrial Revolution. For example, the voting rights for women. It was just the 10% that hopped on, that were making loud noises. But the politicians in most of the countries, especially the United States and Britain, that's where basically suffrage came out. The new statue of what's her name, Millicent Fawcett. She jumped on was after World War One, because the men were also saying, look, we don't have the vote. Most of them didn't have the vote then either.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going off to war and dying, and they were saying, look, we are going off to war without any rights and that. And what's happening here? Those 10% that were fighting for the vote for men and women was just allowed minority, 10%, more or less.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Yeah, that's what's happening today. But when it comes time for, if there's an economic crisis, the majority, the 90% are the ones that are heard. That's why I am. It's a bit anachronistic, but God damn it, I want an economic crisis that would make the Great Depression look like a bad Friday afternoon at Wall Street.
But that was the problem, Carlos, because we had 2008 and it really hit, and yet it, the proper consequences of that never happened. All we've seen is Brexit. That's the only consequence we've seen of that in Britain.
Yeah, the citizens are paying for it, not the ones who did it.
Not just that. Catalonia is also a result of 2008.
No, I'm saying in Britain, it's just.
You're talking about that.
But
that thing in Spain.
The two parties are still just as mental as ever, set on exactly the same policies. They've learned nothing.
That's the thing, though. In all fairness, and this is something the point I wanted to make earlier. Name me one political party in Europe that you can clearly state is right wing.
Or left wing.
No. Left wing is easy to define. But right wing, which party is truly right wing? Even if we look at the Netherlands, everyone's talking about how the PVV is such a right wing party because they are anti-Muslim. But if you look at their talking points, except for that one, every other one of them is left.
And that's the same everywhere. Britain, it's the same. But what happens is you get a Tommy Robinson and everyone go, oh, he's a right wing because he talks against Muslims. And the guy's a centrist, politically.
Yep. I mean, it sounds to me like everything's moved so far left realistically that there is no right anymore.
Well, there hasn't been a right in Europe for more than 30 or 40 years.
Wait a minute. Well, what's about Poland? Isn't Poland a right-wing country?
No.
Well, then, I mean, wouldn't it help to draw a new line?
Well, yes.
But this is why I asked earlier what it meant, because
that's why the left doesn't want to draw a new line. The left isn't looking for that because it will counter every narrative they are pushing. It will counter every talking point they deem to have a right to push. As soon as it becomes clear that what they're doing is basically narrative driven and negative, people might actually not like it anymore and stand up. But for the time being, everyone seems to buy into it because they are believing the narrative.
Well, actually, can I make rather... The left uses emotion. Their arguments are essentially emotional. Yeah. They just disintegrate under any fact.
Oh, please! The right, especially.
No, I'm going to say, right. That was exactly what Trump did, and how Trump won, and that's why the left hate him, because he used their bloody tactics.
Yeah,
and no one was supposed to use their tactics.
I'm not saying Trump is right, to be honest. I don't think he's right-wing either.
No, I'm saying, but they hated him because he used their tactics against them.
Yeah, he's a Democrat. The Republicans voted in a Democrat.
Republican, but he is not a Republican. I don't know anything about him. If anything, he's like, wouldn't you say he's more of like, I guess, here's a new term, would be like a conservative national Democrat.
He waved the rainbow flag at a Republican convention. So
realistically, I think Trump just repeats the last thing he hears anyone say to him.
No, I don't think that. And in all fairness, Trump was a Democrat for, well, what, the last 30 or 40 years or what?
Rudy Giuliani
loved
was a
him.
Democrat before.
Sorry?
Rudy Giuliani was a Democrat before. A lot of
yeah.
Republicans were Democrats before. That's not exactly a...
Well, that's the typical path, isn't it? You start left and you go right as you get older, is the cliche.
Yeah, that's what I've always heard. That's what my dad always said when I was growing up.
Trump didn't run in the Democratic convention.
No, he's a Republican. He's a registered Republican.
Yeah, because they had the Democrats in this point in time. They already know who they already choose who they're going to put forward. The Republicans know they can. The Republicans are what I've seen are more. Anyone can run and have success if you have a good enough message, like Trump is. Trump, yes, he was a darling of the right. All the people that are criticizing him now, he rubbed shoulders with them. They took beautiful pictures, smiley pictures, and everything. Even Hillary Clinton, but because he ran against her, there you go.
Yeah, well, the Clinton and Trump's.
I like the orange one by the orange Oompa Loompa.
I love.
But he has.
He
has some good. He has a good economic policy. That's good for the country. And also, he also made China back down on trade, North Korea back down on the nuclear shit, and he wants to fuck that. We're not going to fight any wars. Let the Arabs fight between.
Hold on, I just have one thing to say about the Korean thing is I don't think Trump had anything to do with Korea. Korea got their nuclear weapons, and now that they have the capability to produce nuclear weapons, regardless of how very few they might, I think they have enough plutonium for 8 or something like that.
Yeah.
8 bombs.
Yeah, exactly. But as soon as Trump said, "I have a bigger button than you have," the dick measuring contest, little fat Kimmy backed down.
Yeah, that's a real simple way to look at it.
Yeah, but you know what? He backed down. He wasn't really about that. China controls North Korea. There is no one pushing that fact. Controls North Korea, because if they allow the North Korean regime to collapse, they will have 22 million refugees into their country. They will sort of be overwhelmed because China's not that strong. Even though
China's already overwhelmed.
Yeah, exactly. And if 22 million people just suddenly flood into their country, they're going to collapse. They can't go south because there's a fucking mile-wide minefield, so they go north. And China, Trump with his trade talks, which he's done really, really well. I agree with him in that aspect. He has pressured China to pressure North Korea. Before the summit, Kimi went to Peking. Well, they called him over and said, "Hey, Kim, come over here, mate. We have to have a talk." And it was all secret and hush-hush and that. Look what's happening. He suddenly closed down his nuclear test facilities. He stopped producing uranium. He stopped producing the nuclear missiles.
He didn't have a lot to produce them with to begin with.
He had all he wanted to produce with them. He could produce as many as he wanted, except that China was forced to play the hand by Trump. If a Democrat government or a weak-limbed European or other countries' governments, Western governments, would have said, no, it's okay. We'll negotiate. No, you can't negotiate with idiots. And that's my rant. Now I'll leave it up to you guys. I fogged deep enough.
Did I hear clapping?
Maybe.
I know. I overwhelm even myself. I overwhelm myself. I apologize.
I want to know why Democrats choose illegal aliens over Black lives.
The same way feminists in Britain choose Muslims over young girls.
No, I think I understand it. I've been really trying to understand them. Do you know what's happening? So I don't know if it's the same in your guys' countries. Who's all American here?
Right
Who's
here.
American?
Right here.
Just you?
I'm American.
Oh, Rin, yes, you're American. Okay. So us three. Okay.
America.
So yeah, have you been reading and have you noticed that California and a lot of states, right? They have a pension funding crisis going on. And so they've kicked it down the road so often that there's now small cities in certain states that have had to cut the pensions of police officers, fire departments, anybody that was on the government payroll. And so they're now going to have to get a Social Security. But
I actually haven't been paying attention to that.
Well, the biggest bubble, if it happens in California, I don't think people understand how much of United States economy depends on California. When that bubble pops, that's why they're trying to keep us focused on other things, because there is going to be all the old people. I feel sorry for them, because remember that there was only like 3 days that they didn't get welfare, like the food stamps.
Yeah.
This would be like that on steroids. We're talking collapse after collapse after collapse, and with the baby.
Why are they pushing in new people?
Wait, Elicia, what do you mean that so much of America's economy depends on California? Are you talking about celebrities in Hollywood?
No. I'm talking about the farms.
I was like, California is like the 6th largest state.
Yeah. Economy in the world.
Yeah, it's the 6th largest economy.
We get so much of our food from them. Like, they're our breadbasket. There are Zimbabwe. They really are.
Also produces
Now Utah has caught on to this, and so Utah has been changing a lot of our demographics where we've introduced more farming. But if your state is not introducing farming, you're gonna see a problem in your state. But so the reason why, because it's so much easier to focus on the shallow problems, right? Like bathrooms was never an issue before, and then all of a sudden they decide to make bathrooms in high schools and have little boys showering with little girls. That's enough to piss everybody off enough to not look at our looming financial crisis.
Well, I said the Syria bombing.
But on that, when it comes to my food, most of my food comes from Mexico. So I mean, I never really thought. Yeah, I never thought of Hollywood. I mean, California being this place that has a large farmland when all of my food comes from Mexico and orange juice comes from Florida.
Yeah, orange juice does come from Florida. We have a lot of orange groves down here.
But the real question is, there are lots of problems already. So why are they pushing for the sanctuary states so much that even certain cities that are deemed to be sanctuary states are now saying, yeah, you know what? We don't want this.
Is it really that hard to understand? I mean, it's identity politics, man.
I understand that part, but why do they need...
No, there has to be something more to it. It's because, so you have the baby boomers, right? They're coming of age. That was the biggest generation, right? And
well, California's also got like the largest homeless population, I think, in the U.S.
Yes.
That's because it's warm there.
Probably, but that's the same for Florida.
Florida has... We do have homeless, but it's nowhere near as bad as California.
Yeah, but if the temperature and the climate are the only reason, then Florida would have had the same problem.
Yeah.
Not only that, but California also has the worst education of all 50 states.
Also,
it's true. This
is worth pointing out, but California also produces like 80% of our almonds for the country. So no more chocolate almond bars.
Oh man, I drink almond milk. I need to get an almond tree. Seriously. I need to grow an almond tree.
I'll guess I'll
But
survive without almonds.
I'm just saying is that identity politics has thoroughly gotten everybody away from what's really happening. But I do want to know, why are they bringing in people from foreign countries? I can tell you why, because they can't afford to pay Americans anymore. So now they just want to get rid of us. We're too expensive.
But at the same time, the amount of money California is spending, wasting, whatever word you want to use, on
Pissing away.
Illegal immigrants. I mean, it's a third of their total gross product goes away to fixing up things for illegal immigrants, even though their own citizens are being left to die on the streets, literally. I don't understand.
They knew what they were doing.
They're out of touch. I sometimes think that they're out of touch. Maybe it's the same problem that we're seeing on campuses with these teachers that have been working on these beautiful campuses for the last 30, 40 years of their lives. They're so out of touch with reality. Almost all of our representatives, I don't even know how they have Alzheimer's medication and dementia medication going to the White House and these places. I just think don't know what's going on.
No one can really understand modern societies because they're so complex. You're frozen.
I don't really think our societies are complex. I really
they
think
are complex.
No,
insofar as cause and effect are you do this, and the results are unpredictable.
Yes, let me try to rephrase that. I don't think our societies are really complex. They are forced to be complex. It's not that we don't.
Why?
But yeah, it kind of does, because it's all divide and conquer, in all fairness.
No. Let's consider Marx, right? Marx divided the society into the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Even that was a simplification, but basically, now you look at society now. There are so many social groups. You can't divide it into 2. You can't divide it into 4. You can't divide it into 8. There are so many because.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's divide and conquer.
No, but it happened organically. You can't say it's divide and conquer. That implies
organically. Sorry, John. It didn't happen organically.
What,
it's
the way
being
that
pushed. It's seriously being pushed. If it happened organically, people would recognize themselves as being part of a group.
No, they wouldn't.
If you're not people are not recognizing themselves as part of a group. They're recognizing others as part of a group, and they're against that.
No, but that's what people do. It's like everyone says, "Oh, I haven't got an accident."
When you look at what people do, people create groups around them. What our societies have been doing for the last 60 years, it's creating groups of the other. Not the groups us and other. No. Us is one group, and we.
I think I get what you're saying, Modwain, because it's kind of like people form groups, kind of like Christianity is a group, like people go to church and form a group as a church. But when you look at the anti-feminist community, most anti-feminists would say that they're individualists, but they all see feminists as the other. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not quite what I'm saying, though it's correct. What I'm saying is that the social justice warrior, the social justice narrative, the Black Lives Matter narrative, all these new subgroup narratives are not talking about how they are one group and the rest are the other group. No, they see themselves as one group, but they subdivide the other groups. And all of the subdivides of the other groups are obviously Nazis, so that's easy enough.
But Modwain, if you took them and you actually looked at them by socioeconomic categories, you've got tens and tens of different groups.
No, you got hundreds of different groups.
Yeah, whatever. The point is you've got lots of different groups, because what used to be a relatively simple categorization of occupations now becomes so variable, because there are so many different types of work now that didn't used to exist.
Yeah, but that's the thing, and that's being pushed. That's not happening naturally.
You don't think it's been happening naturally?
I'm 100% sure it's not happening naturally. We are being polarized, whether we like it or not. That's not a natural effect.
No, but polarized is the opposite of what I'm talking about, because polarized is splitting into two. Whereas I'm saying, you know, it used to be there was a limited number of ways you could look at the way the occupations people had. Whereas now you've got so many more different ways of having an occupation.
No, that's not the point.
Well, that's the point I was making.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is that our society is being torn up in smaller and smaller pieces every single time.
But you're talking about a different point from the one I was making.
Well, so maybe, but I'm talking about...
No, it's all right you saying, oh, it's on purpose, but you're talking about a different thing being on purpose, whereas all I'm saying is as a consequence of increased technology and the post-industrial ways we work, society is becoming more and more complex in terms of exactly, you know, you haven't got just the upper class, the middle class, and the working class. You've got sort of like so many different layers depending upon where you are in the corporate structure and what kind of job you've got and what kind of education you've got and where you live. And
John, and can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
John, and I think this is what Mott was saying, that it's being forced. Like it's being forced, the basic dividing of our society.
Because the way occupations have developed is organic. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not being forced.
No, but the thing I'm trying to point out, it's not based on occupation. It's not based
on... I am talking about it as being based on occupation and the different identities that derive from that and the different communities we have and the different ways we live, and these affect the different ways we talk. And it's all right you saying that's a separate point. That's fine. I'm not going to argue that because I wasn't talking about that.
But just after the war in the Netherlands, people were also divided between Catholics and Protestants, and even the Protestants had all these different kind of groups. And a Catholic consumer didn't went to the Protestant baker and the other way around. So
yeah.
And back then it was enforced by the church.
But those forms of separation within the state wasn't, especially not in the Netherlands, but in other countries. I think in Ireland and in England, Great Britain, it was a problem because there it actually...
Hello?
Yeah, but the state didn't do it.
Well,
the state didn't push it.
We could hear you, by the way, Dick. No, but it was being pushed by people. And it wasn't
just the way that Dick was saying in the Netherlands.
No, because if we look at it in the Netherlands, people segregated themselves on religious lines, so to speak, but they still considered themselves Dutch. They still considered themselves part of the same country. If push came to shove, they would put their hands together to work harder. This is actually what happened directly after the Second World War with the rebuilding of the Netherlands.
So, but what's your point in contrast to Britain? Because I don't see
if we look at Britain, this is for a longest time this was the same thing, but it started breaking up when separatists in Northern Ireland. Welcome back, Dick, by the way. When separatists in Northern Ireland.
No, Modwain. You're talking about a 800-year-old struggle.
Conflict, yeah, but it wasn't constantly the same struggle.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
But
if we look,
the conflict had died down.
Yeah.
And in the 1960s, tension between the communities arose.
Started again.
Because the Protestant pro-unionists started discriminating against the Catholics, and tensions rose as a result. And the British Army went in to applause and celebration by the Catholics. the people who you're saying, oh, they didn't want to be part of Britain, true, welcome the soldiers to protect them.
Yeah, no, I know. But that's the thing. A lot of the divide and conquer stuff that's happening in the last, let's say, 60 years. If we look at Northern Ireland, if we look at Germany.
But it wasn't top down.
Let me finish, please, mate. Let me finish. If we look at the different ways of societies are being broken down, yeah. If we look at the Northern Ireland situation, if we look at, in all fairness, look at Scotland and England. It's a different situation still, but just let me bear these points. If we look at Germany, if we look at Czechoslovakia, if we look at Hungary, if we look at Zimbabwe, if we look at South Africa at the moment, all of these things are being driven by something that's not internal.
Yes.
It's not people standing up against each other. It's people being pushed towards standing up against people because of arbitrary reasons. And this push is
not internal, but that's still internal in most cases. No, but to say it's not internal means it's done by someone from the outside.
Well, it's being pushed by people from the outside. That's definitely true.
Who?
What about natural differences? And I'm not talking about skin color or any of that crap. I'm talking about there are certain people that do like to just go along to get along. There are certain people that like to lead. There are certain people that like to follow. What if we're just seeing a manifestation of a collision of not just what we're being dictated, but who we are really on the inside?
Well, the thing is that,
and there's
the thing is, we are getting pushed, and this is, for example. Then let me finish, John. Come on, I haven't even started talking yet. If we look at how things are going politically, we are being told to think in one direction. Our schools are being told to think in one direction. Our philosophies are mainly going in one direction, and this is all going against the will of the people in countries. But the people in the countries don't see this because the media is pushing along. This is, for example, if we look at Hungary, they're not only standing up against the European Union, they're also standing up against organizations like Soros's Foundation for a Better Humanity, because they recognize that these are pushing certain patterns, and they have been doing this in many a country. There's a reason why there were so many tales about how nearly all Black Lives Matter and Antifa protests in America were funded by Soros's Open World Society. So there are people like George Soros, and I'm not saying he's the only one, because I'm pretty sure there will be more of them, that want to push for basically a society where either you follow what they want, or you're a subversive. And this is going on for, well, decennia.
Forever. Yeah. It's kind of like, it's almost like brainwashing to a new level, right? Is that what you're saying? Is that?
Well, it is. And it's happening from kids on. I mean, if we look at, for example, Europe after the Second World War, there has been a period after the Second World War, let's say the first maybe 15 to 20 years, where societies were actually harmonized in trying to build up their country. But once that was done, they kind of tried to subvert the harmonizations. This is when we saw the return of the Rote Armee Fraktion in Germany, for example.
What about monkeys? I mean, every time I watch documentaries on monkeys, they always end up in tribalism again, and there's no external forces. If we are from the monkeys, isn't
humans have a humans have a slightly more extensive social interaction system.
No, but you're making a fundamental logical fallacy there, Modwain. You said what the government's doing is against the will of the people. There is no will of the people, and I'll tell you why, because the people is not homogenous.
Fair
There are
enough.
groups. These
Fair
groups
enough.
have different interests which often conflict.
Fair enough.
Therefore, there may be large groups, majorities, against whom the government acts. But to say that they're not acting in the interest of anyone in the country is false.
I'm not saying they're not acting in the...
No, but that's how you stated it.
No, what I'm stating is that they're using a divide and conquer technique on all
Yeah, but you
citizens.
said it was from outside, that it was against the
Well,
will
it's
of the
mostly
people.
driven by
I'm
outside
talking about how
forces.
you expressed your argument, and I'm saying that's a fallacy because it might be, you know, throughout history, if you look at all societies, you had an elite. The elites had the handle on power. And they would rule in their own interests because they're humans and that's what you do. And that might involve doing things not necessarily in the best interest of the people. And as long as you can convince the people that it can be no other way, it just carries on. And we're not in that situation anymore. And we've had 50 years of people coming through, influential people coming through into politics, into the media, into all sorts of positions in society, brainwashed as a conscious, the long march through the institutions, as they call it, in certain ideological ways of thinking. And that is an internal thing.
But it's being driven on by external forces.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, like whom? Because it's no good going, oh, and it's Soros.
I'm gonna agree with Modwain on this. I will agree because you have to understand there's a point where people have their own ideas and their own structures and all of that, but there is a point of malleability where that's why brainwashing techniques have been used. And so
yeah, I agree with you, Elicia. Yeah.
Yeah, it is true. So we know that George Soros is like the most disgusting thing. I don't know how he can live with himself. And he can manipulate. He can manipulate with money because almost everybody can be bought and sold. And because of that, we're so easily manipulated. And then if you look at
before him.
Well, I know. I'm saying is
that's
that
what I'm trying to say. You're looking at one factor and you're saying that's the cause, and I'm saying no, it's not the cause. It might be a cause.
Well, it's part of human nature, but it's
you can't ignore.
They have a playbook. They have literally this playbook was written during the pharaohs, the divide and conquer. You had one pharaoh that had an invading people coming in. He fought. He had the people that ended up worshiping him even more. And then it goes, bing, I can control my population easier if I follow this playbook. And then it just kind of is passed down.
I'm not arguing that. I'm saying it was framed by Modwain as the thing. It was driven from outside. And I'm saying it's not driven from outside because there are huge internal forces.
What about the UN? What about the UN?
I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying they're not the only forces. And to ignore the internal forces, the power of academia and the people, which is a self-perpetuating intelligentsia, which has had enormous influence, to ignore that and just say, oh, well, it's George Soros and the UN, to me is overly simplistic.
Well, it just seems like they're puppet masters. It seems like this is how I see it. The Pope had all of the power, and the priests, right? The priests were just his puppet. I'm just using it as an example. So now the UN has all the power, and all the little teachers are little puppet masters, and they can't speak up because how are they going to pay their bills?
No, but again, that's an overly simplistic analysis is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that there aren't people trying to influence it. I'm saying they're not the sole cause.
No, but they are the main cause why it's happening.
No, I'm saying they're not the main cause. I'm saying they're the cause.
People are easily to be manipulated.
So
this is a fact. So who's to blame? The people or the manipulator?
No, but you're saying that the people, the students in the 60s, listen to Camille Paglia. She's saying the types of people with the personality types who stayed in academia, the naturally bureaucratic, who laid the foundation for the disciplines and the attitudes that exist today. And she's talking about the people she knew and what they led to, and she saw it happening and why it happened, and they did it.
But that's the thing, though. It's not just that they are left or right; they're authoritarian, and therein lies.
I didn't say left or right or authoritarian.
No,
There's nothing about that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, you're just agreeing with me there. But my point is it's not just George Soros or the UN.
Well, that's like blaming children for what the children are easily manipulated. And
you're trying to say that they're not in any way responsible for their own actions, and I will not accept that people are not responsible for their own actions.
No, I'm not saying they're not responsible. I'm just saying is that what is the average IQ of a teacher? I'm just saying is that are they these super geniuses that can withstand the pressures of the outside world?
Maybe people could help other people see that they're being manipulated. You know, like there are videos out there that says, hey, this is how you could tell that you're being manipulated, because you fight manipulation with information. And if you have people aware of the tools used to manipulate others, then other people would be more aware, then they could
Exactly, Rin. That's why I went over my entire brainwashing techniques, and that's why I try to give parents, information, because I think sadly, maybe it's not that they're stupid. What if it's just that they're too nice and they just assume that this is what is the good thing and this is what we should do?
Trade to agreeableness, funnily enough.
Yeah.
No, all I'm trying to say is Modwain painted a picture that there were these external influences that influenced all these countries, and I said it's much more complicated than that. There were already forces in play within the country, within the academic environment, particularly, that was already doing this.
But that's the whole point I was trying to make.
No, it's not. You said the opposite.
No, because the influence being pushed by our politicians, by our academia.
No, but you're talking now. I'm going back 60 years, and you were going back 60 years. You were saying, "Oh, it was all Soros doing it."
Well, 60 years ago, it wasn't all Soros doing it.
Well, that was my point, and you're arguing me saying, "No, it's Soros."
I'm still saying that it's being done from a political point of view. This is, if we look back at the Frankfurt School of Thought, critical theory, postmodernism, this has been pushed for how many years now?
No, I agree, but it happened. You said it was pushed from outside.
But it was pushed from outside. Hell, they were even outsiders in Germany when they started.
My guess this is a push for it. If with all the technologies, if we take something simple as a cell phone, were these companies who decided this, or the governments who decided this to give us cell phones? And look at us now. How are we being watched and stuff? And you think that's all a coincidence?
Well, that could be a coincidence. I'm not. This is not the point I was trying to refer. I was more talking about the way the political viewpoints and balance within society is being pushed.
Yeah, but in this case, it were the politicians who decided this was a good idea.
Yeah, the thing is, I listened to John and Mod. Do you know that saying that war is a conflict of a few people? And the same basically is with the ideas that are being pushed in our society. When I look at Poland, well, 20 years ago, I can fairly remember, the idea, like in the 90s, the idea of even political correctness, the idea even of hate speech. Now, I actually got to learn what the communism is because the teachers couldn't lie about that, because my grandparents and my parents did live through that. So the teachers, it was the situation like the teachers better don't push too big of a lie. But still certain things were being pushed by very few people. And those things were ignored for a very long time because it's basically, like you said, well, the idiots are talking now, they don't know any better. But the groups of people who would go around those people would basically grow and grow and grow. So basically certain things that are being now pushed in Poland by quite a large group. I remember I've heard my parents and stuff like that. They were at the beginning being pushed by the very few people, and those are the external forces to me that's starting certain things.
Oh, you know,
that makes sense.
Christina House Summer says something similar. That, you know, feminism, the way we know it now, started off with like 2 women that were really eccentric, really crazy and out there, and people just ignored them. They're like, okay, we're just going to ignore the crazy feminists. But then they got into like good positions, and then they started to spread and share their ideas and got their ideas to spread. And now, you know, feminism is a huge problem.
Yeah, and it's also like when I hear Maud saying, for example, about Soros, few people, yeah, imagine that you start to influence people with your money, but it's not immediately visible to the society.
No, I agree, Sam, but my point was chronology. You can't blame Soros for things that happened before he was doing it. Can you?
Damn it. Soros wasn't the first.
I mean, all I'm saying is I fundamentally agree with the point being made that it starts with a few. I disagree that you call those external.
But they are mostly external.
Well, maybe we need to talk geographically, right? So when American CIA agents and the economic hitmen, like, look what America did to Hawaii, right? That we went in and we used economic hitmen and fundamentally changed Hawaii forever. But we didn't fire any bullets. We didn't do it old school. We used new school techniques, right? And we effectively swallowed Hawaii up. What's to say that this same type of thing isn't already written down, and that's what's happening right now? For all we know, it could be the Germans doing it, right? We can't.
My only question, Alicia, is why do you need? You seem to need an external factor, and I'm saying that there are plenty of internal people, enough of them, to have set this in motion. That in Germany, there were, or in France or in Britain, there were people who read Derrida and the other guy and said, "Oh yes, that makes sense," even though it doesn't.
I'm saying geographically, like if I, as an American, I know that the shit happening in America is internal. I know that it goes way back to when, way back to the 1800s, right? Mm-hmm. And so I get what you're saying. I'm saying
to this strength of the statement that it was external. That's the only thing I was objecting to, was this statement that somehow
But to some countries, it is all external.
Well, I don't think nuance and complexity is fine. I was objecting to the absoluteness of the statement.
But in some cases, it is absolute. That's the that's the thing. In some cases,
no, you made an absolute statement. You didn't make a nuance statement.
I know.
But it is absolute to what we did to Hawaii. It was absolute. That would be if you were in Hawaii during that time, you could absolutely 100, because that was a friggin' paradise, a paradise that the business people in America decided we need a piece of that shit. And they destroyed that island that is now probably one of the most socialistic states now. So that's kind of questionable. It's kind of weird, right? You're thinking, well, why did it go that way? But I really do believe that some countries, it is completely external. But then I think other countries, it is almost 100% internal. And maybe if we can come to that agreement, we can say, okay, so what is it about the United States versus, say, one of the cold countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland, that, so the United States, it's internal, but like Sweden, it's external. Why is that? Why is it one country is dying because of the internal forces, whereas another country is dying because of the external forces?
Well,
I think that would be more
I just cannot accept any simplistic answer that says it's internal, it's external, because it's always a very complex interaction of forces.
I don't believe it is. I do not believe that any of this is complicated. If it was complicated, brainwashing wouldn't be so readily used. If it was so complicated, you wouldn't have been able to create the Nazis so completely and wonderfully. If it's so complicated, we wouldn't have such a huge group of people that are acting this way. It's probably...
No, you're saying... No, because you could say brainwashing isn't complicated, but you can say the factors that cause such a thing to arise in society is complicated. You're not looking at the same thing there. To get a societal shift of a major scale, it usually requires a confluence of different factors. The confluence that happened to cause Nazism was so incredibly unfortunate for the world. So many things had to come together all at once to create.
Not really, to be honest.
You don't think so? You think if there hadn't been the Treaty of Versailles, there was. If there hadn't been the Wall Street crash in '29, if there hadn't been...
No, in all fairness, the Second World War was bound to happen anyway. It was just a matter of time. This was recognized after the Treaty of Versailles. But one of the main reasons why it was recognized was because the First World War wasn't really finished. They merely stopped. That's not the same thing.
No, I didn't say the Second World War started. I'm talking about the Nazis.
Yes. And the Nazis are basically a direct result of the Antifa and the
No, they're not. They're a direct result of the armistice terms, the reparations, the economic crisis, the Wall Street crash.
Oh, sorry, John, you're wrong.
I'm not wrong.
Because the main problem the Weimar Republic was facing wasn't even that. The main problem was that they had people in their streets attacking people in their streets for wrongthink. That's the main reason Antifa got started.
And why are you only blaming the
Nazis got started? Sorry?
Why are you only blaming the Antifa? Because the Nazis were just as bad.
Oh, no,
all the right-wing groups were just as bad. They were as culpable as the right.
I'm not going to say they weren't bad, but they were a direct result of the Bolsheviks. They were a direct result of Bolshevism. Fascism was a direct result of Bolshevism in Italy. The Nazis were a direct result of Bolshevism in Germany. The Bolsheviks actually united and created Antifa in Germany in 1933. The Nazis weren't big back then.
In 1933?
Yes.
Hitler became chancellor at the end of 1933. I think you're a bit wrong on that.
No, I'm quite right on that. He became chancellor, but half of Germany still wasn't behind him.
No, he only had 33% of the vote or something like that.
But he got more of the votes. Didn't they have
three major parties? They had three major parties.
And he got more votes, he got more support because of Antifa.
Okay, so can I just So I'm seeing here we're kind of not being productive at this point because we're getting stuck on little tiny words. You know, John is in absolutism, and there's people like me that I am an absolutist, right? This is great. This is great, though, because we actually do have a nice spectrum in this panel. And what I notice is so I'm probably the only really hardcore conservative person on the panel from what I can see. And so we're getting hung up on the little details, so we can't help fix some of the bigger details, like going back to, like, Rin, as an American, why do you think that we as Americans seem to be so bringing conflicts upon ourselves, whereas countries like Sweden have to import problems?
I think that you're right. I think that we are being manipulated. Kind of like how you brought up the wedge issue of should little boys hop into showers with little girls, you know, or share bedrooms, you know. It's going to upset many parents, you know, the whole unisex bedroom things, you know, because you know, it's kind of like when I was in the YMCA, it's kind of a lot like these bedrooms. You get undressed, you get naked, and you put your swimsuits on, and then you just, you know, and then after you go swimming at a YMCA, you go to the bathrooms, you get naked, and you put your regular clothes back on.
Yeah, that's probably it. Maybe it's because we have this Wild West spirit left in us, right? We have this Wild West spirit left in us. And maybe that's why we as Americans have such internal strife, whereas...
But you're also the third most populous country in the world. You're very large, you're very wealthy, and you're very diverse.
We're the melting pot.
No, but these factors make a difference. I mean, in the UK...
But we're not diverse.
Because we're 4 countries.
Yeah.
And the Scots have an essential separate identity to the English. We've been a unit for 300 years, and still there's a large number of them don't want to be united with us, even though they're happy to be united with Europe. And that's what happens when you get strong identities, you get tensions.
Well, I think Americans have strong identities.
That's what I said. I said you're a big country with strong identities, and they conflict. Like you were asking, why do you conflict? And I'm saying, as a big country, it seems quite natural.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that Britain's the same to a degree, because even though we're a little country, we're 4 countries, and therefore we have these tensions, just on a smaller scale.
So how do we fix it? How do we fix this problem of this madness that's taking over every friggin' country? How do we, us little people, because if it starts with just a few, then that means we stand a chance. The truth, they don't listen to, they think their truth is the truth. And as a matter of fact,
not them.
They say they're enlightened.
You don't beat them, you beat everybody else who's watching and doesn't know and doesn't understand. And they hear all this, but the women's paid less for being women. And you just have to say, no, they're not. And you say, no, they're not, nicely and clearly and confidently enough times, and slowly they will doubt the narrative.
Hopefully.
Well, that's the hope.
I don't know if I believe that, John. This last thing.
On this, I tend to agree with John, though. We need to make people see what's going on. And whether you believe in a conspiracy theory or not, it is important that people recognize what's going on. What's the main reason you homeschool your kids?
Because the partitions. The partitions. The main reason I tell people, it actually is the dumbest reason. So I'm a parent, and my children are my children, and the school put up partitions where I couldn't just walk into the school and walk into the classroom without being announced.
Okay.
And I said, absolutely not. How would I know if the teacher's doing something wrong if you're going to announce it?
So basically, you just went to homeschooling because you had a reason to distrust the schooling system. Yes.
Exactly, because I don't trust any system that doesn't trust me. And then we did the online public school, and then my eyes were open. It was as if I'm telling you guys, I was blind. So I pull my kids out. We do online public school, so it's exactly the same, right? It's not homeschooling, even though you're at home. It's not homeschooling. And I went through each lesson with them. I sat with them. And most parents don't do that because they don't have the time. But I happen to like learning stuff, and I think it's fun. So I would sit with them. And then I was horrified.
Yeah.
I was horrified. The Common Core that they brought in, it's so much more than this stupid math shit. Oh, I swore. Sorry, everybody. But
don't worry, I swore earlier.
It overwhelmed me that what they were teaching, and it wasn't even what they were teaching too, it's that they were teaching the exact same lesson over and over again. So my first grader at the time and my 10th grader at the time, they had parallel lessons that were just slightly different. I'm like, so like the first grader would be learning about clouds, right? So this different clouds and all this stuff. And at the same time, the 10th grader would get a lesson on the clouds. Yeah. But it was basically the same. Yeah. The only thing different was the math. I kid you not, just the math and the vocabulary. Yeah, but
I'm echoing. I'm when I was in school, I've noticed that myself, I don't have any kids, but even though I don't have any kids, when I was in school, I've noticed I was learning pretty much the same thing over and over again. It's kind of every year you learn about slavery. Every year you learn about the Holocaust. Every year you learn about the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And that is why so many kids are disinterested in what they're learning. Because, like when I was
understand that, because there's so much to learn. Why not teach kids the same thing?
Let me finish. Man, okay, so when I was first getting in education, like when I was in like the first grade and like the second grade or whatnot, school was actually fun. School was actually fun because you get to learn something new and interesting. So you're more invested and you're more interested in what you're learning. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm learning all of these new words. I'm learning sentences. But when you begin to learn the exact same thing every year, like when you learn the Holocaust every year, when you learn slavery every year, it gets boring and dull, and you lose. It's not, you're just not interested in learning anymore.
Yeah. It's almost like Rin. It's almost like, and it might be different, John, because we're talking about American education, right?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It's like, British education has changed a lot. When I was at school, we didn't have a common curriculum. We do now, and I don't know what it is, but we never learned the same stuff.
Yeah, the same is true for me when I was young. But in all fairness, what Elicia is saying, I recognize this from America. I recognize this from Australia. I recognize this from the UK. I recognize this in a lesser way, but still happening a little bit here in the Netherlands. And that's the thing. Who is pushing these narratives? And why are these narratives being pushed?
Yeah. Well, I know who's pushing the comprehensive sexuality education. I found that motherfucker. So
yeah, but this is something. Sorry, I recognize as well, because when I was, of course, I'm from Poland, in a basic school, I didn't have that bad, because I would have some part of history that would repeat in a high school, but it's because we take it really wider then. We take it really. There was some repetition as well, but in the end, my high school wasn't so bad. Now, a few years ago, I heard from a friend of mine, they came to the system when they basically cut the years that you are in high school. And it's like, before it was like a basic school, high school, you got your diploma and you could try and go study. And now there is something like your basic school is shorter. And then instead of high school, you have something we call gymnasium, and then you have a high school. And what they did is basically you learn less in basic school, you learn a little bit in gymnasium, and then you learn it one more time in high school or whatever it's called. It's something like that, because I can't remember. So that repetition is now also pushed in Poland, as far as I know. That repetition was a little bit when I was going to school. Not not that much though. So yeah, this is also weird. Why is it happening? Why we are basically starting to teach our kids basically less?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It doesn't make any sense. I mean,
well, no, that's what they need. It's like really weird. It really is weird. I'm telling you, when my eyes were opened that year, it was as if a train had smacked into me. Like literally a train had smacked into me. And then the more that I dig and the more, I can't tell you how many hours I spend reading actual lessons that the parents have to, or not the parents, the teachers are giving. And it's just, there's something really weird going on. And I think Modwain is right. There's something weird, not right.
Elicia, do you?
Well, I think that Sargon has a point when he says that he thinks that they're trying to dumb us down on purpose.
Well, yeah, they've done that for years, but this is going, we're talking way back when the first public schools started in Germany and in America. That was always the intent, was to dumb down, at least in America. I'm not speaking for the other countries, because you guys do way better than us, but the intention was always to dumb us down. But that was just for factories, right? So for factories. But now this is taking it up a notch, where Australia should not be teaching the same lessons that we're teaching in America. It shouldn't be happening. No. Why is it?
My parents always said that, my mother always said that, well, not only, but I remember her saying that the stupider the societies of the country, the easiest is to control, right?
Yeah.
And now, look, basically, people at some point, at least that's how it was in Poland, at some point they started to said, okay, we want to have an education, higher education, to be that the more common, that more people have a chance to obtain it, not everything only that expensive and stuff, right? Now, if I'm giving you this, and I haven't thought that through, so maybe I'm going to say something really stupid, but basically I'm going to make that for you, so you have that idea that you can obtain the education, so you basically shut up because you finish your study. But in the meantime, I'm going to force feed you the things that kids are learning, so many things that they don't need at school. Therefore, we change the system the way we're changing it, so the kids learn the same shit over and over again. And then we also make stupid faculties on the study, like women's study, management of free time or whatever. And then you are really ending up with people being very happy that they finished study because they, could pay it. For example, in Poland, they were good enough, or they had a major debt in America. But the whole education, actually, it still sucked. They still cannot do anything. But they have the idea, if that makes sense, because I had this idea now as you spoke, so I don't know if I can articulate it.
No, that was perfect. That was perfect, short story. That was perfect.
That sounds exactly what's happening.
It's just the propaganda. It's like I have this sort of thinking because I'm from Poland, and when I'm telling people stories that my parents told me, and I'm telling those stories, for example, here in the Netherlands, very common thing I heard is like, I know you well enough to believe you, that you don't just make up the stories, but I can't believe this and I can't imagine. So therefore I'm easy to slip into those. But basically I'm going to feed you the story that I'm giving you that, and you shut up because you finish your education. Or you still be useless.
But they think they're educated. That's the worst thing, is they think they're educated. They think they know stuff, and they know bugger all.
And this is the main problem with our current education. When education was started, people were pretty much against it. We're talking about Middle Ages. But it was reading, writing, and calculus. That's it. And somehow throughout the years, or the decennia, or whatever you want to call it, the centuries, stuff got added. Now, language skills, yeah, sure, important. Math skills, yeah, important. Those things are not the problem. But then suddenly people started using, for example, history classes to educate the masses. And they had to be educated away from what absolutely happened. I mean, certain points that we feel important, we repeat. For example, the Holocaust, the Second World War, etc., etc., etc. How many of the people out there have heard of Holodomor during their education time? Well, in the Western world, not a lot of people, because it wasn't deemed necessary or important. So we are being played.
Oh, yeah.
And the last 30, 40 years, it's getting worse. Boys are not allowed to be boys in school because they're too boisterous. Hell, I have it with our own son. They complain at his, how do you call it, preschool?
Yeah.
He's 2.5 years old. So he is too active. He doesn't sit still for 15 minutes. Of course not. He's a boy, for fuck's sake.
They want to make boys girls. You know?
It seems like, that was the impression I was under when I was watching an interview between like Sargon of Akkad and Christina Hoff-Sommers, and they have like a similar discussion where I think like in England, they give boys drugs to help them sit still and be like more like girls or something.
No, that's in America.
America's way over drugged. We are the biggest druggy nation, Rin. We are the biggest druggy nation. As a matter of fact, I personally live in the state that is most medicated for psychotropic drugs. The little boys, and it breaks my heart. I'm grateful I didn't have a little son, just for that reason, because I see the war on little boys. But they've been drugging little boys since 20 years now. 20 years.
Well,
I'm saying like in mass scale. Yeah, mass scale.
The thing is that. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No. Go ahead, please.
No. Please finish that.
What happened though in America is that in some states, if you don't give your son these dangerous psychotropics that will make him grow boobs, by the way, Ritalin will make your son grow boobs. You will have your child taken from you. They will be placed in foster care. And in the foster care system, the average child is on 5 psychotropic drugs. And in America right now, we have 250,000 babies under the age of 1 on antidepressants. Go figure that one out.
Oh.
What? That is really weird.
It's not weird, because you have to understand that in America, we are the biggest druggy nation of them all. We consume all the drugs. And you have mothers that are taking just all these la drugs, they're like drugged out of their head because they can't handle being in the workforce because it's not for them. So when you have a little boy that's just needs a little bit too much attention, it's easier to drug him.
Yeah, and also the problem is this is something I point out to Maud about our son. Is that, look, when we talk about the fact that he's still not speaking, I hear from the same teacher, oh no, don't worry about it, because you see, one kid will develop this faster, and then this other will develop faster. So one will start run faster, and one will start climb faster, and the other will be better with a language. But when it came to the freaking sitting still for 10 minutes, she was like, no, the toddler this age has to be able to sit 10 minutes. Because then he goes to school at the age of 4 and he needs to go there. And I'm like, you ask me to train my son into something, to something, so he can stand, so he can actually go somewhere, which the place that is not good for him to begin with, like school. And I have to already prepare him for that. When I clearly see, and this is the information that parents often don't get, 2 days a week, my son starting at 12:15, and I checked it. If I go first to the park with him and let him run, they basically say how nicely he played in the freaking corner at the table with a sort of glue or whatever, how nicely he sits. When I don't take him to the park, or he starts, in the morning, so I cannot take him to the park, he has a problem with sitting. So, and a lot of parents don't know it, but also we somehow don't spread that information too much, I have a feeling.
You're right. Like, my granddaughter, she's wild. Like, if I was an SJW, I'd probably say she's a boy, but she's not. She's a girl. She's afraid of bugs. It's great. The same thing with her.
How does she identify?
She identifies as Overlord. Anyway, but she's the same exact way. When if I don't take her to the park and let her just run out that energy, she's just a nightmare. So, and maybe that's what we need to do is, like, I wonder if that would help boys at schools if they had like a morning session where there was like hardcore recess beforehand.
Oh, there is absolute proof that it does.
Yeah.
There is absolute proof that it does. And there are schools, for example, in the Netherlands, there are schools, kindergarten and lower education, where they plan in half an hour run every day.
Yeah.
Just that simple reason.
Well, we used to, when I went to we have infant to primary, which I don't know what the grades are, the first 6 years, 1 to 6 probably. And you went to school and you were in the playground before you started school.
Yeah. It was the same when we were young as well. They just changed it. And the main reason why they changed it, and this is funny because I know this is actually a fact in the Netherlands, education is a problem for boys. And they know this, even though the last 30 odd years, they've been taking away physical education, playtime, outside running, etc., etc. They've been taking away they've taken it all out so that they can spend more time within the classroom. And then they are surprised that this is not working out for our boys.
Yeah. They make it better for girls, and then they wonder why boys do worse. Yeah.
And from day one, people have basically pointed this out. I can give you article after article from school teachers to university professors researching this. Every single one of them tells us how this isn't working. And somehow we are still following the feminist narrative that pushed this. And it's getting worse and worse and worse.
I just insert a quote I heard from Jordan Peterson. He said, when they find out something in social science, they're unhappy. Because they have all these theories, and whenever they test it, they find out they were wrong.
Yeah.
But sorry, referring to what Maud just said, basically you said that from the very protectors of our societies, because men is the one to protect, we are basically make sure that they have that they're weak and that they have at least behavioral problem, right? That's basically. So now I'm asking, is someone standing behind this? Because what are we doing? Because now it's used to, and I hate this term, because when women do well, society do well. No, both women and men have to do well for a society to do well, and we're basically destroying the protectors of our society.
The problem is you have a dogma, a dominant dogma, which says men are the oppressors, and no matter how much you change it, that still remains unquestionable.
What if it's the transhumanist dominant mega alpha males that just want to get rid of all other males so that every woman can be their concubine? There you go.
That's a good idea. No, I don't mean it's a good idea, but that's a good suggestion for what.
No, I'm just. It is weird. It is weird. Why are they destroying our men when we need our men? And that is a great question.
And then importing men who are masculine men from foreign cultures.
They're not masculine. They're horrifying and scary.
No, but they're masculine men who will destroy our civilization and the very wealth these people are relying on.
Stefan Molyneux made once a video, and he put really big percentage number, like he took a woman, and that the huge percentage number that women fantasize about being raped. Yeah. So when Elicia says that that they are horrifying and barbarian, which is true, and then
see, I think
maybe women pushing it, or feminists or women pushing it into some degree as well.
I have to. So Stefan Molyneux is clearly, he's got some mommy issues, clearly. So I respect a lot of what he says, but until he deals with his mommy issues, I don't take a lot of his credibility on women and women's.
Elicia, but one thing, 50 Shades of Grey. Why the hell is it selling like that? I'm telling you, I've given that so much thought. I've given it so much thought, because the number one fantasy for a woman is to be raped, right? But let's put it in the correct context. Now, my mother loved smut novels. Oh, I'm sorry, romance novels. And every time there's a rape, there's a rape, there's a rape. But let's put it in the context from a female. From a female perspective, it's not the rape that a man would think of as a rape. A man thinks of rape as a guy comes, grabs a woman, rips her clothes off, gets it, and gone. Whereas a woman, the rape is that she is so desired by this man that she likes. It's always she likes the man.
Yeah, it has to be the right man.
He desires her. No, he desires her so much that he can't help himself. So it's not. It's more of a love lust thing, where, and then she gets to still be the good girl.
Yeah, so, yeah. She abrogating responsibility for desire.
I totally disagree with it. Women don't like barbarians, and even Jordan Peterson has brought up that women are picking beta males because of the birth control pill. But a true alpha male treats them respectfully, just not in the bedroom, right? So I don't think every woman that I've seen with a refugee is not very attractive at all.
The thing is that he also made, like, Peterson also said once that he's thinking that basically, also because of the feminism, we don't have a really, like, true real men, because we make them all into, freaking excuses for a man, and that's maybe now feminists are so for open borders because there is no manly man left in Euros. That is very, very simplified, but that's basically he said along the lines, which kind of makes you think.
I wonder if the reason why we're importing so many men from foreign lands has anything to do with the calculus experiments.
The what experiments?
The Rat's Paradise.
Oh, Mousetopia.
Yeah, because everything was so good, everything was great, and it ended up leading to the mice becoming extinct. So because everything's so good, led to people not mating and breeding and ending up becoming extinct because they don't really want to have children, to just import some chaos.
No, I think it's more what Elicia was talking about with the pensions time bomb. The politicians in Europe have been very conscious of that for a long time, and they want more young people coming in because as native populations, we have a lifestyle which doesn't promote large families. And so the population ages, so they're going, oh my God, what are we going to do? Oh, we can import these 20, 30-year-old men and come and do the work and they'll pay into the system.
Well, here's a question to add to that, John. They've been manipulating us and telling us not to have kids for so long. And didn't the BBC, they put out a newsletter saying that you need to shame Western people that have large families? I mean, So what the hell is that about? I mean, that contradiction messes with my mind.
Yeah, and the fact that they would then, if they would import people to work, that they would make sure they work, not sit on a welfare. When I hear the numbers, like large numbers of immigrants come and 200 of them have a jobs and the rest have a welfare.
Can I just say that this sounds like a case of never ascribe to malice what you can put down to incompetence.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that if it weren't for the fact that we've recognized this malice and, this incompetence, and we keep pushing for it.
I'm joking, sorry. I mean,
if we look, there's a reason, for example, where Sargon started talking about that old English politician, I forgot his name.
Enoch Powell.
Yes, Powell. And it seems that some of the things that Powell predicted back then have been, happening 10 times over. We had the same problem in the Netherlands. We used to have Centrumpartij, which was rather right-wing, and it was rather nationalistic, and no foreigners in here at all. And for years they tried to silence him, and eventually they managed that quite well. But now even left-wing politicians are talking certain points that he brought, even though they're not actually doing anything. I mean, PVV, Geert Wilders, is very much against Muslims. But PvdA has said worse things than Wilders has said. But no one talks about that because PvdA is still left-wing and they're still pushing the open borders narrative, even though they recognize the problems that we are having with the influx of Islam. And personally, don't get me wrong, I don't want to blame the acts of Sharia-abiding Muslims on all Muslims. Most Muslims are secular, just like most Christians are secular. The problem is the ones that aren't. And
I mean, at the end of the day,
in their passport.
At the end of the day, I have a simple view that it's not even, it's like Eastern Europeans generally come to Britain, they're pretty able to integrate, but you still don't want too many of them all at once.
Well, yeah, that too. And in all fairness, if we look at Britain, the integration has somewhat... No, to say it's stagnated would be an understatement.
No, but we had decades of it working just fine. That was the thing.
Well, actually, if we look back on it, we didn't have decades of it working just fine. Because if the one thing we must have had learned from the Rotherham scandal is that we have decades where we were being told it was working fine, but in reality, it wasn't.
It wasn't all, but the vast majority of the immigrant communities who came here did integrate just fine.
Well, it depends on which immigrant communities we
all
talking
but
about.
the one. All but the one.
Yeah, but what's that one? Because it's not the one.
Muslims.
Yeah, yes, Muslims. I wouldn't even say Pakistani Muslims.
No. The rape gangs are almost entirely Pakistani.
Okay.
It's a Pakistani culture. And if you listen to someone like Hashim al-Madani, he will tell you he's from Iraq, and he will tell you, he says, it's no good putting the religion above the country because there's enough difference between people from different countries that override the religious similarities.
Well, okay, you could be correct there.
Well, I mean, I can only point you to his video, but he made a video on this, and he was saying, you know, people make the mistake. They say, oh, yeah, you're all from the Middle East, and so you're all Muslims, and you're all the same. And he's saying, no, we're very different. And we have our own identities, our own cultures, our own food, our own everything. And, you know, to gloss over that is to actually misunderstand them because you're just reducing it to a simplification of, oh, you're just from the Middle East and you're just a Muslim, therefore X.
No, you're correct there. You are correct. That is true. But the thing is, it's not all Muslims. And the problem we are facing in the Western world at this point is that, well, in all fairness, if we look at what's going on in Sweden, if we look at what's going on in Germany, if we look at what's going on in Belgium, if we look at what's going on in France, if we look at what's going on in the UK, a lot of it is coming from Islam, but not all Muslims. Now, on this, I mean, hashtag not all, I totally agree, but we're not allowed to talk about it because as soon as we do, we're being Islamophobic or racist or whatever, but the problems aren't going away. And it's not just, this is what feminism is doing in our schooling. This is what the left is doing in our politics. We've created a society that is so politically correct, where the narrative is so politically driven that you're not even allowed to mention certain things.
No, I think that the YouTuber V, he's Stargums. Yeah, I think he brought up a good point when he was talking about Rotherham, like how the rape gangs has been doing it for a long time. He says he made a video. It's like a kind of element video. But he talked about how the police are probably in on it, and how the police are probably into pedophile rings and whatnot. It was really a video.
Unfortunately, this is a problem, I think, Rin, with the hierarchical systems, because you only require a few people at the top to be involved, and they get to dictate everybody underneath.
Yeah, and to me, it's the biggest problem with the scandal. I cannot pronounce that place. I'm sorry. I cannot just get it out of me now. But the biggest proof that the integration of migrants, it doesn't work. It's not even that this gang existed for so long. It's that it's more terrible to me that the police didn't react. Because bad guys are bad guys, and I don't expect too much of criminals, but I expect from my police forces, from my politicians, I expect from them to be honest, to react, to take action. And just because they didn't want to be seen negatively, they didn't do anything.
I think it goes much higher up, much deeper than the police don't want, the police as in individuals don't want to be seen to be racist, because nothing happens without sanction from the top.
Oh, of course. And it's also like if we are for immigration, we cannot basically show you that there is a problem, because if you start to realize too soon that there is a problem, the sooner you realize there is a problem, the sooner you're going to be against the immigration, right? And we just want to push forward. So we have to push the crap that it's all, you know, great.
Mm. But that's the thing, because it's still only very specific segments who get the special protection. That sorry, I forget her name. Somebody English, I think she was called, who got arrested. Did she get sent to jail for the posting a rap lyric? And she was black. It wasn't, you know, they can't say, oh, it's an evil white guy.
No, I'm not sure if she got to jail, but I did think she got sentenced with probation, though I'm not really sure.
But the point is she was black.
She's got community service.
Well, she puts a lyric up and she gets prosecuted. I mean, what the hell?
It's what makes it totally scary to me is that she only put up lyrics of someone else's song.
That's what I mean. It's like,
so basically what happens when that guy comes to Great Britain to perform?
Wait, why isn't Antifa being arrested for calling people Nazis then? Because that's really derogatory. I think that's up there with the N-word.
There is no understanding why they get a pass. None.
There is understanding why they get pass.
Why doesn't the Queen of England just take back over her damn country?
Because basically they get pass.
That's funny.
Antifa gets passed because Antifa causing more and more trouble at this moment, and whoever wants the trouble, make sure that they get passed. It's divide and conquer still. Like, I allow certain things that are the most destructive to the society at this moment because it is divide and conquer.
But you see, I don't think that the left are left. There's nothing left-wing about them. They're racist, they're sexist, they're violent. You know, who am I describing? Would that be your archetypal right-wing thug?
No, the right wing is supposed to be without rulers.
Yeah, you're still talking about the left, mate, but you're talking about the authoritarian left, which, in all fairness, the left really is. I mean,
no, but the left is not supposed to be based on racism and sexism. It's supposed to be.
It always was, though.
But they don't think they're racist. They think they're enlightened. I shit you not.
Yeah.
Oh, I know they do that, but the point is the powers that be seem to be quite happy with their racism and sexism.
Yeah, but they've always been racist and sexist. They just claim that they are not. And
no, I'm talking about those who enable them from on high.
Divide and conquer.
It works because it's natural. Every brainwashing technique works because it's natural. We do have a natural proclivity for dividing ourselves up, and then somebody in power decided, well, look, we can just use that to our advantage.
It's kind of like that last video I made about what's her name, Marianne Zwagemans.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. Sorry.
You should.
I know I should.
Anyway, I'm going to talk about it real fast. So then you know what it is and you can skip it. No, you still should because it's good for
I'm going to watch it.
Anyway, she talks about how in the Netherlands we have a schooling system which is based on 3 steps. Lower, middle, and higher education. And basically she's saying you shouldn't use lower education as part of a description of someone who has a lower education. Because basically what you're saying is that person is low. So basically she's putting a value on a description of education. Now lower education could also be what in America would be called trade schools. And somehow she is dead set against making sure that no one ever says lower education anymore because it's so bad. And as an argument, she's then going to say, well, I mean, people with higher education, well, they can read better than people with lower education. And I'm like, how the fuck can you say that in the same sentence as where you say, well, you're not supposed to say lower education? You're trying to say you need to elevate these people, whilst at the same time, you're the one putting them down. And this is what the left is constantly doing. They are against racism, but they constantly assume that they have to defend the weak black or the weak Muslim or the weak blah, 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 because they think they are less.
Yeah.
And the problem is so deep that in the Western world we have a class judicial system where, in all fairness, everyone benefits but the natives.
Yeah, that was Sargon's speech on Monday.
Well, he's correct though, isn't he?
Oh, he is, absolutely.
So we really need to return to the rule of law, and the rule of law needs to become blind once again.
Absolutely, but the laws need to be made blind as well, because they're not.
Definitely. No, they're not, because in the UK, a man can't be raped.
Yeah.
How the fuck is that possible?
Do you remember the Istanbul Convention? Was it last year, year before?
I can't remember, to be honest.
Yeah, there was an Istanbul Convention about violence against women and girls, and it went. And Philip Davis was arguing against it in the House of Commons because he said, "I don't think we should ratify this because it's sexist. It specifically talked about women and girls. What about
the boys? Yeah.
You know, why are you using sexist language?" And they want to use sexist language. They want to specifically say, do it against a woman when you're a man is bad, and say nothing about the converse.
Yeah.
And that is the definition of a sexist law.
Yeah, because in all fairness, boys are not the issue. Boys cannot be the victims, they are the perpetrators. When we talk about domestic violence, we're still talking about how it's a male problem.
Yeah,
males are violent.
And it's a
now
lie.
We know that 60% of the victims is women and 40% of the victims is men.
But what we don't know is the perpetrator. They always go for the victims. But when you look at children, 70% of the perpetrators are women.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when you actually look at the percentage of perpetrators, in fact, more women perpetrate than men.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because we also know that where 40% of men are victim and 60% of women are victim, we know that 70% of women are instigators. So 20% of men, 30% of men, 30% of men actually fight back, and then they are called the perpetrator. Even though they fight back, they defend themselves. 40% of men don't even bother fighting back, but they get ignored as well. 70% of domestic violence is initiated by women, and we're not to talk about this. But we know this. It has been researched time and time again. I mean, I must have mentioned this on this stream once or twice as well. If we look at heterosexual relationship, male gay relationship, and female gay relationship, domestic violence is by far biggest in female gay relationships.
Yeah.
And it's by far lowest in male gay relationships.
Yeah. I mean, Erin Pitsey, when she set up the world's first domestic violence shelter, she immediately observed that the violence was both ways and women could be just as violent. And she wanted to set up centers for the male victim, just as she had a center for the female victims. And guess who opposed her? Not just argued against her.
No, I actually
literally terrorized her out of the country with bomb threats.
If we look at the Duluth model, the Duluth model is 100% the result of feminist doctrine.
Yeah, the biggest problem we're having now is that different laws are upheld for different groups of people, and the discrimination based on some identity trait.
Yeah.
Here in the Netherlands, we now have a situation that illegals are put above the law by local authorities. So
this is what's happened in England if we look at the Rotherham cases, and not just the Rotherham, Telford.
Well, there was that one yesterday. Was it yesterday? That man who attempted to rape that woman and he was let off.
Yeah, because he didn't understand her.
And it's like, oh, goodness sake, if you have a law, you have a law. And if people come to your country, they obey the law, because ignorance of the law is no defense.
Wasn't Sargon speaking of someone who was suing the NHS because they were forgetting they forgot to tell them to feed a baby?
Oh, that was a slightly different case. Yeah, no, they got hundreds of thousands of pounds in compensation.
This is fucking, that's madness.
Yeah, and it's insane. You're thinking that's an American law.
And when you,
no offense.
no, and when you say, John, that I agree, people are coming here and they're supposed to obey the law, because look, I'm from Poland and I'm at the moment anti-immigration, and people call me hypocrite, and I'm like, no. When I go to work in the Netherlands, I do not call for 3 days just because in Poland I used to have it free because of whatever celebration or a Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's rooted in my culture that strongly, that 24th of December I was free, that doesn't mean that I'll be free here. And it can mean that even though I'm not working as a doctor or a firefighter, but just in a factory, I might be working night if it's necessary, for example, or late shift on the 24th of December. You cannot have best of both. But what I see with my friends, well, I'm having a lack of now word in English, because you're like friends, but then you also like less close friends, just people you know massively.
Acquaintances.
Yeah. What I think it's scary that it happened that I used to talk about, just Polish people coming here to work and sometimes staying here, sometimes coming here every 3 months for 3 months and they going back to Poland. I said always, well, if you're coming to stay here, you have to learn the language. And if you're not going to stay here, maybe you don't have to learn the language. But in both cases, you need to, obey the law. Don't do criminal shit. Go to work legally, pay the taxes you're supposed to pay. Just, behave. And they basically say they agree with me. And the same people are calling me Islamophobic when I applied the same rule, exactly the same rule, to Muslims. All of a sudden, I'm racist and Islamophobic, and people don't want to speak to me. And I'm like, okay, fuck you.
Proving Elicia's point about brainwashing, because if ever there was a case of brainwashing, it is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is exactly that. But how come, like, when I look at Polish people, they are really demonstrating against basically migration, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially Muslim migration. And they still know their history. They basically know who Sobieski was, and they say, we will not forget what happened. And even they say, it's not only that we will not forget what happened, we see what is happening now. We see what's happening in Sweden. We see what's happening in the countries that took a lot of migrants. And you know what's weird to me? That on average, in Poland, with no offense to Polish people, really, the level of English language spoken, and if I look how many people speaks English, is really still, I think, less and a lower level on average, it's fair to say, than in the countries like the Netherlands. And yet those people manage to go on the internet, see all those videos in English, and freaking draw the conclusion and see what's happening.
Yeah. That's the most frightening thing, though, isn't it? It's not that the information isn't even there. It's that people manage to process it in strange ways that you think, well, how can you see what I've just seen and then come to this completely different conclusion about it?
Yeah. Anyway, in all fairness, I just checked the time. It's nearly 2 a.m. here. We had a good talk. Really enjoyed it. But I am going to say, you know what? We're going to stop now.
And we've still got 12. That's good for this time of night.
True. A lot of people are watching. But then again, we've got 12 people watching. I think half of us is us.
Yeah, it's not all of us though, which it has been.
True that. Anyone want to have any parting words?
Yes. We started this live stream with the statement that history is repeating itself. But in the same stream, we established this is not the same kind of socialism as back in the industrialization period where John was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So even though human behavior repeats itself, the circumstances are different. We have now different technology, etc. A lot of people are talking on the internet. Just look at those channels like Sargon or stuff like that. So this is a cycle, and that socialism keeps coming back, but the cycle can be broken. So there must be something we can break this.
I hope we can, to be honest. I really hope we can. Because
my only point for mentioning it's that socialism keeps coming back because of capitalism is because if we can actually work out why, that will help us break the cycle.
Oh, I think I can tell you why, at least partly.
Okay.
Well, we are being told how the two informations we get is like we are very poor and our conditions of living are terrible. And the other informations we get that we actually have it really good. Well, no, that we actually can have it really good. No, I'm sorry. First of all, can I switch the mics?
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry. I hear myself speaking, and then basically my thoughts are running away because I can't concentrate. So one of the reasons is that we are very whiny about what we have. We don't see what we have, and we think yet again, that in socialism we will find the answer because the thing will be more fair. Our life will be more fair, and this is a big problem. And yeah, and to be honest, I'm finished because I really got distracted by hearing my own voice. So I'm sorry.
My point in short was history. It's not completely true that history is repeating itself. It's always a slightly different.
Yeah. There's similarities but differences.
Let's call it the next step in the evolution.
Well, it could be. But at the same time, we do have to be careful because, in all fairness, society's growing pains always happen with bloodshed. And I'd rather not see any growing pains, to be honest. I mean, I'd rather see growth without the growing pains.
Well, we do what we do, and that's all we can do.
That is true, unfortunately. And the problem that I'm seeing now is because of the push. No, stop. I'm going to stop because otherwise we're going to start all over again.
Well, at least we're kind of prepared mentally.
Next week you'll be able to go. And last week we started.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone want to shield their channel?
Yeah,
I do. Oh, you go first.
Okay, I'll chill real quick. Everybody go watch my last video. It's great.
I will. Promise.
Wonderful. It's fantastic. And share it. Share.
It is a good video. I did share it.
Okay, I am Rin Michaelis, and please subscribe to my channel. And I'm going to have two new videos tomorrow. And if you like my 2 new videos, please share my 2 videos everywhere, all over the place, and recommend me to your family, your friends, your neighbor, just grandparents. Please just get my name out there.
Okay. Dick, how is your video going on?
We're getting there, mate. No, I'm also busy with my work, so but it's coming. I'm preparing for. I've trying to work with my phone, but I think I need to buy some kind of camera.
Okay.
Is there more YouTubers like me that just want to have a channel but don't make a video?
And John?
Yeah.
And when is your next video out, mate?
That's a very good question. I've rewritten it 6 or 7 times so far. I'm trying to do a video of sufficiently short duration about why I'm an anti-feminist, and that is too big a topic to fit into the tiny thimble of a video.
Okay, well,
when you're a windbag like me, I mean, you know, it's like.
I am going to try to put the links to all the channels in the description soonish. I'm not going to do it tonight anymore. I'm sorry, guys. Considering it's 2 a.m., I'd like to thank everyone that is still in the chat with us. And I hope to see you all next time. By Crusader, by Marcel, hi, and by Mountain Man. I didn't see you come in, Mountain Man. I'm sorry. I'm not sure who else is still in there, but bye to everyone. And we're going to drop out.